Alright, so as I was saying, I'm going to try to talk about the Argentinian psyche versus the Canadian psyche, or my psyche at least, versus what I was observing in Buenos Aires. And there's going to be some serious generalizations, and probably fairly from a male perspective, like everything in boxes as you can see, but I'll do my best to explain this. Okay, so to get into it, this will represent North America, or my approach to life, the way I deal with things. Everything goes into boxes. The boxes are labeled. You got box 1, 2, 3. And inside the boxes we have tools. So inside box 1 you have wrenches. Inside box 2 you got your pliers. Inside box 3 you have your screwdrivers. Okay, so everything is, all the tools are in their boxes. And for us, when we go to navigate life or approach a task, we have everything organized beforehand, and then we approach the task. Whereas I believe in Argentina, from my perspective, they don't really put as much emphasis or effort into putting things into boxes. It tends to be they're just out on the table, and this is a difference. So for us, we have to take the lid off the box. You have to reach in the box and you get your right tool to do the task. Although we had to agree on the label and we had to agree on what box goes where, and we had to build the box. In Argentina, they never had to do that. They didn't worry about labeling the box, building the box, or deciding which box has what. It's all right here. So one of the big differences we see in this is that for us, there's 2 stages here. We have to plan and then engage in the task. Or you could put it down to we have to plan and then engage in life. Whereas the Argentinian doesn't have that planning step. They're right in there, ready to go. They're in the moment and they can get right to the task. They don't have to plan beforehand to the same level that we do. The drawback to the Argentinian is that it's slightly disorganized. So with this number of tools, it's not that difficult to select the right wrench to do the job. But with a larger pile of tools, you might not have the ability to do the job on your first selection of the tool. You might go, well, that one didn't work, let's do this one. This one doesn't work for the task, let's do that one. I mean, obviously with tools, you know what you're doing, but life in general, right? The way you approach life. I just think we compartmentalize things much, much, much more. So yeah, those are sort of the drawbacks and the positives for each system. Like I said, we plan first, and then we attack the task. They just go straight to the task. And I'm not really talking about work here, not accomplishing a job, not talking about work. I'm talking about separation as a means of control. So for example, we can control the situation with this system. This is this, this is this, this is this. Maybe they're not obsessed with control as much. Maybe they just go straight to the moment, straight to the task. So that's something I noticed. That's very abstracted, but we'll kind of go into more details and specifics about that. So it's not just North America that does this, though. Okay, so you have to look at like language, for example. So said box number 1 has wrenches, box number 2 has pliers, box number 3 has screwdrivers. Okay, well we do the same thing with language in order for communication to be efficient. So when the child learns like a glass or a cup is a cup is not the same thing as a clock. Okay, we'll start with C, but they're different words. And we have a universal agreement, okay, this is a glass, this is a cup, in order to be efficient with tasks, in order to be efficient with communication. Even the same things with man-made objects, like for example, like a sky versus the ocean, or blue versus red. We come to these decided definitions for things. We define them as this in order to communicate more efficiently. So everybody does it, but I feel that we do it to a larger extent beyond just language in North America. And then to like take this out further from purely this idea of tools and engaging with tasks or life perspectives, with boxes as well, I feel like in North America we have this concept of first place, second place, third place. So your first place would be like your house, second place would be your work, and your third place would be where you recreate or you have fun or you socialize or whatever you do that you really want to be doing that's outside of your house, that's engaging with people or activities or those types of things. And like I first encountered this theory at Starbucks because they said we have to make Starbucks the third place for all of our customers, right? That's their third place when I was working at Starbucks. But it actually comes from a theory by Ray Oldenburg in the late 80s in a book he wrote, The Great Third Place. Even the idea of having to define it as a third place is a very North American concept, or a very, it's our concept. It's not the same thing as the Latin or the Argentinian or the Porteño concept. They don't have the third place. It's not putting some box over there to go do on Friday night or Saturday night. It's part of life. So that's a major difference. And if you look at what's happening here, I said like the control gain through separation of the tools. Well, what happens for us as well, I'm going to move the work box, your workplace, out of this because I didn't really notice great differences between the workplace in Argentina and in North America. There are some differences, but that wasn't a major discovery of mine that there's a great difference there. So I'm just going to remove that from the equation here. If we're looking at first place, home versus where you recreate, for us in North America, I feel like the home becomes like this place where we decide what comes in and what doesn't come in. And it's like you're sort of like shelter from the world. Like the walls, the roof and everything, they kind of protect you from the unpredictable, the random nature of the universe coming in. You can kind of control that. So your house becomes your domain of control. And the place where you recreate over here is not so much in control. You can decide to go there, but once you're in there, that's a social sphere. You don't control all those variables, right? So what happens for us, I believe, is that we choose to go to the third place. And I believe the Argentinian does not separate between first and third as much. Events of the third place sometimes take place in the home, and the home isn't viewed as so much as a necessary domain of control. So I believe that's one major difference as well. And I want to kind of view this in terms of a sports analogy. I think it's probably a better way to look at it. So for example, when you're in your home, like your domain of control, it's like being on the bench or the bleachers of a sports game. It's like you're spectating. So yeah, there might be some excitement, but like you're pretty much protected. You're not responsible if the team wins or lose. You don't suffer any great consequences. You're kind of safe, right? You're on the bench. And the third place, where you recreate or where you're interacting, there's high level of unpredictability. That's more like being on the court in the game, where you don't have control over all the variables. And like I say, we kind of decide to go there Friday night, Saturday night at times, but we don't spend a lot of time there. And I believe even when we are on the field in North America, we'll be on the field, but we are always, part of our brain is always aware of like the exit off the field, the exit row, the exit corridor off the field. We're in the game, but we're kind of always aware, like, how do I get out of the game? As if it's like we have I need to throw an anchor down to a safe way out of the unpredictable. Whereas I think like the Argentinian, there's no place the Argentinian would rather be than on the field in the game. The concept of being on the field and thinking about leaving the field, it almost like for me doesn't exist for them. When they're on the field, they're on the field. And they're there. They're not sort of, okay, I'm here, but this is stressful and you know, if things get too crazy, I've got that. No, they're on the field. And I believe that's a major difference between sort of like our psyche and their psyche. We always need to have that ability to get back to the domain of control. And I don't feel that they obsess over that quite as much as we do. However, to be talking all these things, I need to kind of go into something else. Because I was living in Buenos Aires, the big city, okay? And I'm talking about difference between our psyche and their psyche, but something that I could never really suss out, like if it was an influencing factor, and I'm sure it was, is how much of that difference was not Argentina versus Canada, but was big city, Buenos Aires, versus Kamloops. So I feel like in a small city, you don't have this constant bombardment of stimulus. You don't have this endless stream of stuff happening around you. In a big city, whether it's North America or Buenos Aires, you don't have as much ability to block yourself off from everything, just because of the inherent density of the life. So I feel that like small town versus big town, small town versus big city, you're already operating more in boxes, because in a small town you have more room to build your house, there's more space between everything, so you can filter that stimulus much more easily. I feel in a big city that's very difficult to do. So the cosmopolitan versus like small town kind of thing, I think, is a factor as well. And the other thing like about boxes, and I've talked about this a bit, it's not just your house. So like for example, in a small town like Kamloops, for example, we're in a valley, so you can see the box of the city. You can see it. You can see where the city stops and the nature begins. You can define this is the city and these are the limits of the city. There is no way you can do that in Buenos Aires. There's absolutely no way. Like there is no barrier between like a city and nature other than the river, and even that the city's built up to it, and you can't go into the river. Like you can't walk in the water. It's not a place where people recreate. So Buenos Aires is an endless sea. You can't define it. You can't put it into a box. It's impossible. Kamloops you definitely can. And then if you talk about people, other variables, Kamloops has like 90,000 people. Yeah, there's no way you can know 90,000 people. But through some sort of sense of 6 degrees of separation, you can feel like, okay, I have a good idea of who all these people are, you know, a good majority of them. there is no way you can do that in Buenos Aires when the limited space where all the houses connect, all the buildings connect, is 15 million people. You can't do that. You can't get a sense of, oh yeah, through 6 degrees of separation. No, you don't know all the variables in Buenos Aires. So maybe you don't obsess over it as much. You don't try to put it in a box as much. So I think there's something to be said there for rural versus, not rural, but small town versus big city living. I think in small towns we put things in boxes a lot more because we can. And so when we talk about putting things in boxes, like why are we drawn to put things in boxes? Why are we drawn to get off the field? Well, to get back to control. But I think what happens is when we separate ourselves through these boxes, when we separate ourselves from the world, we're not engaged at that moment. And so I feel like there's two things you do then. You go home and you turn on the television and you distract yourself in that fairy tale, in that unpredictability like a spectator. Or if for some reason you're not drawn to the observer's role, you kind of create or you imagine. And I think that's like a lot of times where sort of like mythology or religion or art come from. It's like you're not actually engaging with the world here, so you still need to do that. You have that void because you put everything in the boxes, and you begin to kind of stretch it into a different space where you're engaging with the unpredictable, but in an imaginary sphere or in a creative sphere as opposed to the real world. So I think that's a big difference for sure. So like for me, I feel like, yeah, I've confronted like, you know, living in the imaginary, and maybe some of my specific imaginary things are no longer sacred to me, but I still have a lot of energy to put into the imaginary because I've got everything in boxes being a North American, whereas maybe the Argentinian doesn't. And I think like for me that's like the next step is to try to like get out of the boxes, but it's really difficult when you've got the world secure and safe in boxes to want to like let it go back to chaos. Not that this is chaos, but in a metaphor. And I think like probably the best way to try to explain what I'm trying to do with my brain is with a guitar. So like, for example, this guitar here, not that it's a good guitar, not that it's really in tune, but like these strings here, for example, I've got them tuned a certain way. So I know the system of this guitar. It's all in boxes. So yeah, I can play. I can do that, I can do whatever, I can do that like all day long. I can basically improvise on this guitar because it's tuned a certain way. It's creative, it's improvising, but like all the frets, the way it's tuned, and the strings, the way they're tuned relative to each other, like I know my finger positioning, I know what I can and can't do, I kind of understand what notes to select in order to make it sound the way I want it to sound. So yeah, it's creative, it's improvising, but I am pretty much an autopilot. Like I don't really need to think. My hand positions are memorized. I kind of know where on the fretboard I need to be to make it sound good. So I'm not really engaging with the task. I'm just kind of autopilot. Oh, that feels good. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. And kind of put that in terms of like this kind of thing. That's just literally like the stimulus is coming in life, and you're just putting it into boxes. Goes here, goes here, goes here. It's autopilot. Not actually going like, what is coming in, and like, what is this? It's just like, oh, that's that, boom. Oh, that's that, boom. And I think that's like, you know, the way most of us think. And it's kind of like, how do you get out of that? How do you like really look at the thing coming in and get back into learner mode again, where you're really engaging with what you're encountering? You're not just putting it into boxes. Like, how do you do that? And like with a guitar, like the metaphor would be, like I can play all day. All day long, but that's because I know the position. But what if I change this and this? Now the relationship between the notes is not the same anymore. I don't know how to do this anymore. If I do my typical hand positions, they don't sound good. They don't sound the way I want them to sound. So literally, now I would have to figure out, okay, where do I put my fingers to get the sound I want to get, and what sound do I want to get? Maybe it's a different sound. You do that with the whole guitar. So you have to relearn the whole thing. You can't use your automatic hand positions. So you can't just put things into boxes. But I mean, that's like sort of very unnatural to go, okay, I already have a working system. I know how to play like stuff that works. I'm gonna throw it all away and try to, just so I can like relearn. But as silly as of a task that is, as silly as it is, like that's kind of what I'd like to do. I'd like to get out of my boxes. It's not like the Argentinians don't have boxes. They can probably play guitar way better than we can in general. But I feel like they actually engage with what's coming in a little more than we are. And definitely more than I am. I tend to have things pretty, this goes here, this goes here. So to open that up again, that would be sort of like the next challenge.